Through Advent each year, the Gospel readings for the first 3 Sundays come from the portions of the Gospel after the birth of Jesus. This can be somewhat mystifying until we realize that Advent is not meant to be chronological. That is, the concern in Advent is not to cover Gospel material preceding Jesus' birth just because it comes before his birth. Rather, it's to set up the reasons why his birth is so important and so central to our faith. Each Sunday follows a theme that gets us focused not so much on the birth of Jesus, but on the coming of God's kingdom on earth. That all changes in the Gospel readings for the 4th Sunday of Advent each year. The readings for all 3 years focus on some aspect of the events leading up to his birth. Yesterday, the 4th Sunday of Advent in year C, gave us the story of the encounter between Elizabeth, who was carrying John the Baptist, and Mary, who was carrying Jesus. The Gospel readings for years A and B likewise deal with events prior to Jesus' birth, beginning with the Annunciation of the birth to Joseph. That's the story we'll read today. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas. You'll recall that years A, B, and C in the lectionary focus primarily on one of the 3 synoptic Gospels, Matthew in year A, Mark in year B, and Luke in year C. No surprise then that the reading for the 4th Sunday of Advent in year A is from the Gospel according to Matthew. Interestingly, as similar as these 3 Gospels are, though, it is in the material surrounding the birth of Jesus where these 3 Gospels completely diverge. In fact, as I've pointed out before, Mark doesn't even include a word about the birth of Jesus, but rather begins with his baptism by John in the River Jordan. And then Matthew's and Luke's accounts themselves are very different. 2 things immediately stand out, and we'll see this in today's reading. Matthew's account begins with an angel visiting Joseph rather than Mary, and then says almost nothing about his birth. Then, no shepherds in the fields keeping watch over their flock by night. Instead, we get the story of the Magi and of the clumsy plot by Herod to eliminate this threat to his throne. Mary gets almost no billing in this account. So here's the story, which we'll read next year on this 4th Sunday of Advent. Now the birth of Jesus the Messiah took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been engaged to Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. Her husband Joseph, being a righteous man and unwilling to expose her to public disgrace, planned to dismiss her quietly. But just when he had resolved to do this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son, and you are to name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins." All this took place to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, "Look, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall name him Emmanuel," which means God is with us. When Joseph awoke from sleep, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took her as his wife, but had no marital relations with her until she had borne a son, and he named him Jesus. This is a classic storytelling device condensed into a few short verses. We are introduced to a couple engaged to be married. But then there is a seemingly insurmountable problem. The bride-to-be is found to be pregnant. Now, today that would barely warrant a raised eyebrow, and even in more recent history would have been just a source of scandal and embarrassment for the young woman's family. But in Mary and Joseph's day, the potential penalty for this was death by stoning. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't always carried out, but the very fact that it was even a possibility tells you something of the magnitude of the problem facing Joseph. Faced with this delicate problem, Joseph then worked out a solution in his mind. He would simply divorce her, but do it quietly so as not to arouse unwanted attention. This portion of the story not only serves to set up the problem, it also serves to establish the kind of man Joseph was. Kind, but upright. This plan might have worked, too, until the intervention of an angel in a dream. The angel reassures Joseph that the situation is not what he thinks it is. Mary has not been unfaithful. She has been specially chosen by God to bear the Son of God. Which brings us to the very point of the story. Joseph believes the angel. He reacts in faith, continue with the plan to take Mary as his wife. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had a dream and dreamed that an angel of the Lord spoke to me, I'd probably chalk it up to a night of restless sleep. Not Joseph. God spoke, he believed, and that, as they say, was that. Tomorrow, we'll hear the oracle from Isaiah, which is quoted in today's passage. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.